Here are the headlines for Tuesday, August 6, 2024. Why your job is more at risk if you are working remotely. Remote work is becoming increasingly prevalent, with nearly a quarter of all workers expected to be fully remote by 2025, according to a Forbes Advisor report. However, remote workers are also being laid off at a higher rate than in-house workers, leading many to adapt their work habits to stay relevant. Strategies for success as a remote worker include working the same hours as colleagues in different time zones, engaging in regular online meetings and social events, and making an effort to show a human side to interactions with coworkers. Employers also need to adjust their management styles to effectively lead remote teams, including setting clear expectations and finding ways to measure productivity. Uninsured Americans now more than 27 million, Centers for Disease Control report. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported that the percentage of uninsured Americans rose to 8.2% in the first quarter of 2024, with an estimated 27.1 million people lacking health insurance. The number of uninsured individuals increased from 25.5 million, or 7.7%, at the end of 2023. People earning below the federal poverty level saw a rise in their uninsured rate from 13.9% to 15.7%, the highest among income levels. Pakistani national with alleged Iranian ties charged in plot to assassinate United States officials. A Pakistani national named Asif Merchant, 46 years old, was charged with murder for hire as part of a scheme to assassinate public figures in the United States. He allegedly sought to hire hitmen to carry out assassinations on American soil and used coded language to discuss his plans. Merchant's arrest underscores the Department of Justice's efforts to thwart Iran's ongoing attempts to retaliate against American officials, particularly following the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Homeowners increasingly tap home equity lines as savings rate plummets. As home values reach record highs nationwide, Americans are increasingly tapping into home equity, with originations of both home equity loans and home equity lines of credit balances increasing by $4 billion in the most recent quarter. This represents the 9th consecutive quarterly increase since the first quarter of 2022, bringing the total to $380 billion, a $63 billion increase from the low reached in the third quarter of 2021. Homeowners are using home equity products for renovations, debt consolidation, and emergency cash management as credit card debt hits record highs, and the cost of living becomes increasingly unaffordable under President Biden's administration. Undeterred Chinese Communist Party to ignore risks of artificial intelligence weapons, experts say. The Chinese Communist Party is developing artificial intelligence capabilities that could lead to autonomous weapon systems posing significant risks to international security. Experts believe that the CCP's track record of keeping promises is poor, and any agreement reached may be broken if it serves their interests. The development of AI superweapons could create a vision of victory where there previously wasn't one, making aggression more likely. To counter this threat, some experts suggest developing energy weapons that can disable computer chips or creating an AI Manhattan Project to serve as a deterrent. However, these measures may not be enough to halt the AI arms race, and it may take a profound shock, such as immense human tragedy, to ban the use of autonomous AI killing machines. Middle East on the brink. Goldman Sachs heads discuss interconnected realities of markets and geopolitics amid looming Iran strike. The Abraham Accords between Israel and several Middle Eastern countries continue to hold despite rising geopolitical tensions in the region. The markets have reacted moderately to this situation, with limited impact on commodities but significant repricing of regional assets. To succeed, Israel and its partners will likely need support from the United States. A further escalation could impact oil markets if critical infrastructure is endangered, potentially affecting global growth. Harvard to offer class examining medieval texts through lens of queer theory. Harvard University's English department will offer a course called Queer Medieval in the fall of 2024, which will use queer theory to examine medieval texts such as Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The course aims to explore themes like gender, sexuality, race, power, narrative, trauma, and time through a queer lens. Assistant Professor of English Anna Wilson, who specializes in BGLTQQ studies, will teach the course, which is part of Harvard's efforts to cater to LGBTQ identifying students, including its Office of BGLTQ Student Life, that hosts various events throughout the year. Elon Musk revives lawsuit against Open Artificial Intelligence and co-founders. Elon Musk has refiled a lawsuit against Open Artificial Intelligence and its co-founders Sam Altman and Greg Brockman, alleging multiple counts, including fraud, breach of contract, and violations of federal civil racketeering laws. Musk claims he was misled into believing that Open Artificial Intelligence would be a non-profit organization focused on developing artificial intelligence technologies for the benefit of humanity. The lawsuit asserts that Altman and Brockman manipulated Musk by making repeated promises and assurances that the organization would remain open source and not driven by profit. Musk also alleges that Open Artificial Intelligence's pivot to a for-profit model has resulted in substantial unjust enrichment for the defendants at the expense of the nonprofit's mission. World War III's decisive battle. NATO and its allies face a critical decision: cede the region to BRICS, allowing for a multipolar world order, or launch a full-scale war against the Axis of Resistance in a last-ditch attempt to maintain the United States-led unipolar world order. The outcome is uncertain, but it's likely that NATO would not emerge victorious, leading to disastrous consequences. However, if NATO feels its dominance is about to end, it may choose to launch a war, despite the risks. Ultimately, BRICS is expected to prevail in key proxy wars, including those in Ukraine, Taiwan, and the Middle East, marking the emergence of a multipolar world order and the decline of the unipolar world order established after World War II. Harvard loses bid to toss lawsuit over campus anti-Semitism. Harvard University lost its bid to dismiss a lawsuit that accuses university officials of ignoring discrimination against Jewish students and breaching university policies during pro-Palestinian protests. The lawsuit claims Harvard exhibited deliberate indifference by not responding adequately to anti-Semitic acts, despite being required to do so under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. United States District Judge Richard Stearns rejected Harvard's argument that it had responded to the campus protests, and instead found its response to be indecisive and internally contradictory. The judge set deadlines for Harvard to respond to the lawsuit, which could move forward unless a settlement is reached. Supermicro craters on shocking margin collapse despite euphoric revenue guidance, 10-for-1 stock split. Shares of Supermicro Computer plummeted to the lowest level of the year after the company reported disappointing second-quarter revenue and profit that missed estimates, despite beating Wall Street's sales projections by billions. The server maker's plunging profit margins, which collapsed 580 basis points year over year to just 11.3%, spooked investors who are worried about the longer-term profitability of artificial intelligence-optimized servers sold by companies like Supermicro, Dell Technologies, and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. WTI dips back towards 6-month lows after American Petroleum Institute reports across-the-board inventory builds. Crude oil prices saw some respite from recent declines as West Texas Intermediate WTI stalled its decline around $73 after stocks bounced and lifted Treasury yields, supporting crude for now. Concerns remain about the outlook for crude demand in China and the United States due to softer-than-expected economic data last week. The 5-week streak of crude inventory draws is over as the American Petroleum Institute API reports builds across the entire energy complex, with crude inventories increasing by 180,000 barrels. Despite this, the United States Energy Information Administration predicts that crude oil prices will recover from recent losses as draws on global inventories accelerate in the second half of 2024. Convention visitors, here's the true impact of progressive government on Illinois and Chicago. Illinois is a moderate state not properly represented by its progressive political establishment, as seen in Governor J.B. Pritzker's low approval rating of 41% and Mayor Johnson's even lower rating of 28%. The state has aggressive mail-in voting rules and no requirement for picture identification, which may contribute to voter concerns about election integrity. Despite being a moderate state, Illinois has a strong progressive presence, with politicians like Mayor Johnson supporting radical policies such as universal basic income, which is currently unsustainable due to lack of funding. Additionally, the state is struggling with commercial property valuation issues, high crime rates in Chicago, and a growing concern over anti-Semitism fueled by progressive ideologies preached by leaders like Pritzker. Hezbollah commander warns retaliation strikes will target new sites deeper into Israel. Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah warned of strong and effective attacks on Israel as the world awaits an Iranian retaliation strike. Nasrallah spoke at a memorial for Fuad Shukr, Hezbollah's top military commander killed in Israeli airstrikes, saying Iran is obliged to respond and that Hezbollah will target new high-value asset targets deeper in Israel than ever before. The United States has deployed additional ballistic missile defense capabilities to the region and is preparing to support Israel should it be attacked again. Meanwhile, President Biden was briefed on preparations for a potential conflict, with officials working around the clock to prevent a broadening conflict. Kamala Harris can't win. Kamala Harris is an extremely weak presidential candidate who cannot win the 2024 election fairly. She was thrust into the role by Democrat insiders after they ousted Joe Biden from running again for an office he insisted he should hold on to. Harris has no base of support, lacks cogent policy proposals, and is a poor public speaker with little grasp of national politics. Her selection as vice president in 2020 was largely due to her being a black woman rather than any qualifications or popularity among voters. If installed as president through outright fraud, it would destroy the legitimacy of the American electoral system and signal an end to free and fair election. Turnaround Tuesday stalls at technical resistance, Bitcoin and bond yields higher. The stock market experienced a rebound on Tuesday, known as Turnaround Tuesday, following a sell-off at the start of the week, with all major indices moving together and recovering from losses. The rally was attributed to the lack of ongoing collapse in the yen overnight, and no new macro news to feed the recession narrative. However, experts warn that such recoveries don't guarantee a bottom has been reached, and volatility is expected to continue into October and November. Rate cut expectations have retraced most of Friday's surge, with Treasury yields higher and the dollar rallying back to erase yesterday's losses.